Well, hello everyone. Welcome to episode 4 of Josh Talks Vikes. We're going post draft here. Day 3 just finished yesterday. That was the fourth, fifth, sixth, and seventh round picks. Um, and then we got Quinn Hoover here, a Packers expert, and he's here joining me. And we're going to do a little bit of a divisional episode, talk about drafts, a little bit of predictions, and maybe where we're going with UDFAs as we approach training
Yeah,
camp and the rookie mini camp that should be this week or next week. How you doing, Quinn?
I'm doing great today. I will say that I am actually kind of rather satisfied with the Packers picks. I feel like we made the right moves, especially since we did not have a first round pick to use because we used on Micah Parsons. So I think that what we did was rather good. There are some mistakes that I believe we made that we'll go over here today, and that's more comes from a standpoint of who we didn't pick instead of who we did pick. So let's start off with the Vikings in the first round. The Minnesota Vikings selected Caleb Banks.
18th overall. Yeah. With the time difference here in Germany, it kind of ruined my morning when I woke up to it. Um, but I don't know. I mean, I was a little frustrated at first. I was like, Dylan Dynaman was on the board. There's good corners on the board. I thought the
Yeah,
Vikings were going to go secondary in the first, like they've been talking about it. And they definitely need a little bit of secondary help, I feel like. But I was a little frustrated, especially when he was only played 3 games this year. But watching some of his film, I feel a little better about him. He definitely seems like a decent pass rushing defensive tackle.
yeah.
He really manhandles guys on the interior, the deep interior of the offensive line. Excuse me, but like I don't know, there's just not a lot to go off of this year. Last year, I mean, with 4.5 sacks, 2.5 came in 1 game. So I mean, but you then again, you don't expect crazy stats to come out of a nose tackle. But I wish that we wouldn't have reached for him at 18. If we really wanted him, we probably could have got him in the second.
I agree. I think that always shoring up the D line is important, especially this is one thing I've always said in the NFC North. When you got someone like Caleb Williams, who's impossible to catch, you
Mm-hmm.
definitely need something. And I feel like too many teams are so focused on their edge rushers to get to the quarterback that they forget about the interior and they get ran over. That was an example with the Packers last year. We had great pass defense because with Micah and when Rashawn Gary was actually trying, we were consistently getting to the quarterback. The problem was, let me turn on a light here, was the fact that we had no interior after Devontae Wyatt got hurt. So the biggest example of that was the when we played the Ravens, Derrick Henry just completely ran all over us.
Yeah.
So we definitely need to shore up the interior, and we did that by picking up your guy Javon Hargrave, and also I think that we have Stackhouse, who's really going to improve. So I think picking interior D line is not a bad pick, but reaching for him and then passing on Dylan.
Yeah. I don't know. Yeah, the Packers, it's good that you're shoring up the trenches like you are this year because I believe Kenny Clark was involved in the Mike Parsons trade. You guys sent him to
Yeah,
the
we sent him to
Cowboys, right? And he
Dallas
was like a good defensive tackle for you guys for a while.
for
Um,
sure.
who was the Packers' first pick in this year's draft? I know, yeah, like you said,
So
they didn't pick the first round,
we
but
picked in the second round a corner from South Carolina, Brandon Cece. That was a good pick.
I think
He
that
was listed at the time as the top available corner at pick 52. All I've heard from him, you look at he's definitely someone who you can't look at the stats. I think he only had like 3 interceptions at South Carolina, but he is a guy who can play really good man coverage. He played in the SEC. He's known for locking down some really good receivers out there. He played very well against, I think, one of their games against Alabama and Georgia. He was known for playing very well, and that's teams with really good receivers. And obviously, we need a corner because right now we are absolutely drowning at corner. We do not have
yeah,
any good corners. Our 2 corners last year, Keyshawn Nixon, who's the most inconsistent player I've ever seen, and then Carrington Valentine, who was incapable of tackling. So we were a little rough on the edges. And I remember 2 games where it was really prevalent was our 2 losses to the Bears. We would get a good pass rush, and Caleb would magically find someone downfield because Keyshawn Nixon and Carrington Valentine wouldn't hold their coverage.
yeah. I
And that's
feel
one
like
thing that's frustrated me all year at the Packers secondary is we don't hold our coverage. And that's why we always get beat because we don't keep on long enough.
I feel like that's kind of like, you see like great cases of, coverage sacks, like Saxonville, way back when the Jags go to Jalen Ramsey and the teams do real good strapping up receivers, like, no fly zone in Denver. And then,
Yeah.
just decent to like good, not amazing pass rushers can really get the job done. Yeah, Brandon says I think he should be good or CC. But I mean, like you were saying, his stats don't show the whole story. And I think, well, 3 interceptions isn't something that you can judge a corner on. Like Sauce Gardner, I believe he only has like 2 interceptions and he's been in the league for what, like a few years. But that maybe means people just don't throw your way. Sauce is a great corner. He just doesn't put up crazy
And
stats because people don't throw his way.
that's a great example. And I think that uh because my expectation, this was the expectation among the Cheesehead community that we were going to re-sign Trevion Diggs because we let him go shortly after the year, and the thought was he would come back on a team-friendly deal. But ever since we signed Benjamin St. Justy, who, speaking of Benjamin St. Justy, I think he's a fill-in player for now. I don't think he's elite. He's kind of one of those zone coverage guys, and I, it, it just we have a lot of those guys. But the problem is I think nowadays in the NFL, you need, especially when you play outside corners like we do, you need to be able to play man. Nate Hobbs is a great example of that. We picked up Nate Hobbs last year, but he could only play zone coverage, and he just got torched essentially every single play because he was incapable of playing man coverage. He couldn't hold on to anybody. He couldn't even hold on to tight ends. And we have some of the best safeties in the league with Xavier McKinney and Evan Williams.
100%.
So I don't like these zone guys because you can't have the safeties going all the way deep when you only have 2 safeties on the field. Somebody's going to be open. You have to be able to hold on to your coverage. But overall, I think Brand CC is a good addition to the Packers. Let's go to the
Yeah.
third round. Who did the Vikings select in the third
The
round?
Vikings actually had a second round pick, Jake Golday, linebacker out of Cincinnati. I was a little bit confused with that pick. With what the Vikings have been doing at linebacker, I was surprised because they signed Blake Cashman, I believe, before the 2024 season, and he played very well. Ivan Pace Jr., undrafted free agent, 2023. He's been with the Vikings for, I guess, going on 3 years now. Um, I believe that was when they picked him up in 2023. And he had one of the best PFF grades in coverage against like tight ends and routes against the middle. And they haven't been playing him a whole lot because they signed Eric Wilson, who's playing out of his mind last year. He had one of the best
Yeah.
PFF grades for true middle linebackers. And then they just go draft another one. It's a little confusing to me. I think Jake Golda, he can play off the edge a little bit. So maybe they're filling in for when they traded Gernard in the third round for another pick. But I don't know. Drafting a linebacker in the second just really surprised me. I understand the Vikings want to do something on defense, but uh, I just didn't seem happy with it. It just didn't seem like the move. He does put up good stats though. Did have a lot of tackles for Cincinnati in the Big 12, which is a decent conference. But in the third round, the Vikings had 3 picks. How many picks did the Packers have third
Just
round?
one.
Just
Just
one.
one.
Who'd the Packers take?
We picked Chris McKellen, a defensive tackle, specifically nose guard from Mizzou. This was a mistake, and here's why. I know that Chris McKellen does fill in a gap that we need at nose guard because we don't necessarily have a true nose guard on our team besides Nazir Stackhouse, but he's not very efficient against the pass, although he is efficient against the run. The problem was the position we needed to address most after corner was right guard and a backup right tackle. And guess what? Jennings Dunker from Iowa was right there, and he was the best right guard / right tackle in the draft. Instead, we trade up, which includes getting rid of our second, fifth round pick to go pick a guy that we really did not need. I think that picking Chris McKellen, I've heard a lot of issues with him. I hear that he's a guy who could be just all athleticism, no skill. He did put up good stats at Mizzou. I believe he had like 5 sacks, which is really good for a primary nose tackle. But once again, there's a lot of worries about him. His size is good, his measurables are good, but a lot of people are saying he doesn't possess the technical skill and he can't handle double teams like, a really good nose guard can do. I think trading away a fifth round pick to get a guy that would have been available at our original pick and not picking Jennings Dunker, was a mistake. I feel like right guard's the position we need the most because guess who our starting right guard is? Anthony
I
Belton.
couldn't even
And
tell.
he had one of the worst PFF grades among right guards last year. We have Zach Tom at right tackle, is one of the best right tackles in football, but that's an injury risk. He was injured a lot last year. He essentially played with no back after week 2, and that was
Yeah.
hard for him. And I think it did affect his play because he had a oblique injury and then he had another back injury and he couldn't rotate the same way. I noticed this when really speedy guys would come off the edge, he couldn't get his feet set quick enough. So have someone like Jennings Dunker in who can play right guard and right tackle would have been much better. Instead, I think we overreached for a player and gave up valuable draft stock for a guy that we really did not need. Once again, I've been doubtful of the Packers in the past, but maybe this one will work out. What about the Vikings?
With 3 third-round picks, I feel the same with drafting another defensive tackle. We were talking about size, and both of the guys they drafted have really good size. Caleb Banks in the first round, and now Dominique Orange out of Iowa State. He was their first third-round pick, I believe, number 82 overall. He is 6'4", 325. Caleb Banks is 6'6", 330. So we got some big guys there. But shoring up the trenches, well, it's never a bad move. It's like drafting an offensive lineman. You can't really
Yeah.
go wrong. I just don't feel like it was necessary. I mean, the Vikings, who they have, like Jalen Redmond, real good. He was brought him up out of the UFL, and he's been playing great for the Vikings so far, past couple of years. I mean, Taki Taimani, Levi Drake Rodriguez, these are UDFAs who have been performing some rotators for the Vikings. And then Tyrone Ingram Dawkins out of Georgia last year. He's a little bit of a tweener, can play more of like a defensive end, not an edge. He's more like a run stopping defensive end, and then you can put him inside. But defensive tackle just doesn't seem like the move, especially when the Vikings kind of seem to run like a 3 front with like an
Yeah.
edge rusher on an end or like kind of a 3-4 thing where they really only have 3 linemen and then the guys off the edge are just uh, linebackers like Andrew Van Ginkel who can play a little bit off ball or Dallas Turner. So I feel like we have enough guys to fill that nose tackle kind of 0 tech or 3 tech role that we didn't need to draft another one. But I mean, you can't really be mad. The Vikings have had trouble stopping the run again, especially against run-heavy teams in the NFC North, like the Lions or the Packers. Josh Jacobs has been real hard for the Vikings to contain, so
Yeah.
maybe it'll work out for him. And then they did shore up the trenches, but on the offensive side with Caleb Tiernan at Northwestern left tackle, I was kind of surprised with that pick. I knew they were going to do something about the trenches or, you know, offensive line this year, but I thought it was going to be center. They'd converted Blake Brandell from guard. He's been playing all over the offensive line for us for the past like few years with injuries, but they converted him from guard to center this year. And I was like, well, that's a convert, but like I'd rather have a franchise center, right? So like Garrett Bradbury, who left us last year, now he's on the Bears, division rival. Um, but and guys on the board, like I'm pretty sure Logan Jones, Connor Liu, I believe even Jake Slaughter out of Florida. There were a lot of good centers on the board that I expected the Vikings to draft when they went left tackle. I think that's fair enough. Christian Darrisaw has had some injury concerns over the past couple of years, hasn't been able to stay healthy. So maybe Caleb Tiernan will be able to. And then with the last third-round pick the Vikings had, I believe this was the one that they acquired in the trade from Philadelphia with Jonathan Grenard. They drafted Jacoby Thomas, safety out of Miami. Seems like a kind of prototypical safety. I believe he's just a little over 6 foot, a little over 200. Um, he plays good. He's a good pass rusher. He had 1 sack this year out of a safety, which is kind of surprising. I wouldn't call a safety a good pass rusher, but he seems to get good pressure rates when they blitz him. Hard hitter, and I think he had 5 interceptions this year, which is a lot, which is what you want to see out of safety, a real ball hawk. But he wasn't the safety I was looking for. It wasn't the
Yeah.
safety I wanted, but it was a safety we got. I was thinking that maybe they'd go for Emmanuel McNeil Warren. I'm not sure if he's still available then, but there are a lot of good safeties in this year's draft, and Jacoby Thomas is one of them, but he just wasn't the one I wanted.
Yeah.
You said the Packers traded their fourth, right?
We traded our other fifth. We had two
Other
fifth
fifth,
round picks
other
in
fifth.
the trade for Dontavian Wicks. Because I believe I think we next year will have like 3 fourth round picks because we got a fourth-round pick for Rashawn Gary, but it was a 27 fourth-round pick. And then I think the Wicks trade to the Eagles, we also got a fourth. But with the fourth-round selection, the Packers get a steal in Danny Dennis Sutton, a edge
Ooh,
rusher from Penn State. Let me tell you, I don't know how this guy fell to the fourth. I believe most rankings had him around the eighth or ninth best defensive end in the draft. 6'5", 265 pounds. I
it's a big
mean,
guy.
and he's from Penn State, where Micah Parsons is from. He is known for his incredible size. His reach is insane. He's able to get around the edge. If you put a slow left tackle on him or a right tackle, he usually plays right end. Uh, but he can easily get around, get to the quarterback, especially we need another edge rusher because even though our manager Brian Gutekunst keeps saying, "Oh well, Lucas Van Ness," I have watched Lucas Van Ness for 2 years, and here's what Lucas Van Ness is, and this is a sad reality because we picked him 13th overall in 2023. He's just a muscle fast D end. Works sometimes, but when you're playing elite left tackles, it doesn't. They know how to counter you. He doesn't utilize anything. He doesn't know spin moves. He has no strength in his arms to push aside a guy like with one arm like Micah Parsons can do. And he just kind of goes at you and hopes that he can beat you off the edge. And that's just not a good enough tactic. And what really sucks is our other best edge rusher, Kingsley Ignabari, excuse me, was released because we could not afford him anymore. And that was part of the downside of giving Micah Parsons such a huge contract is we did have to make pay cuts. We did not have room to sign many free agents. I think that's why we didn't bring back Trevion Diggs. Um, just because we didn't have the money and we had to trade up. We had to trade away some guys. Like last year, free agency was really bad. We signed three main guys: Cole Hardman, who didn't even make it through the season; Nate Hobbs, who I already talked about, was a bust; and Aaron Banks, who was also a bust, who was our starting left guard, and he is not very good. So I think that getting a young pass rusher, Danny Dennis, heard similar sayings with him that you saw with Kingsley and Agbari last year, especially when Micah was hurt and the team was drowning. Kingsley stepped up the most out of everybody. He was better than anyone else on that defensive pass rush. So I'm excited for this guy, and I think that he has great depth. And I would not be surprised if he starts at right end. I mean, obviously, everyone talks about Micah, but I've said this all year. Like, Micah can't be the only one. Look what happened when he got hurt. We didn't get, I think we had one sack
I
after
think,
Micah got hurt.
yeah, that really hurts your team. And the fact that he got hurt so late, I'm not exactly up to date with his recovery process, but I expect he's probably going to miss a few of the beginning weeks to start off the season. So you're
He's
going to be,
projected to miss. He says he wants to return week one. He shouldn't. He theoretically could, but he's probably going to be out until week 4 or 5, from what I know. But he is recovering like
yeah,
Wolverine.
you need
He's
a
not
guy
going
who
to
can
go to
hold
week
down the
2
fort for the first few weeks, especially if they have a divisional game in the first few weeks with the elite
and I
left
think
tackles that are in the division.
yeah. Apparently the Bears are trying to get us in week 2, and we're fighting them on it because we don't want to play Caleb Williams without someone like Micah Parsons. And again, that's not a credit to Caleb Williams. That's a credit to his style because he's a scrambler. So I think that we're gonna face a division opponent in the first 4 weeks, which is gonna be hard. Whether that's I think the Bears we're not gonna do it. I think we're gonna go back to playing them late in the year like we have the past 2 years. But it's probably gonna end up being the Vikings or the Lions. And you never want to get down in a division game. So it's difficult.
No, and then the absolute travesty in the fifth round for the Vikings. Okay, so this is where I started. I went 3 for 3 on some projections I talked about in my mock draft and some guys I brought up in the previous episode. I love Max Bradison, love him to death. Amazing fullback, amazing lead blocker. You follow him, you score touchdowns. But I think they could have gotten him way later, seventh, maybe even undrafted. And there's someone sitting there, Emmett Johnson. I mean, I keep saying it. He's a great
Yeah.
running back. Fits perfect for the scheme. Hometown kid, and the Vikings passed on him. I was real mad about that. Not too mad about them drafting. I'm very happy about them drafting Bradison. Just or sad about them passing on Johnson. And then I was about to get happy again because they traded back into the fifth round after trading their fifth round to Philadelphia in the Grenard trade. And they traded back into the fifth round to get the 163rd pick. So just, I believe, 4 picks away from where they picked
Yeah.
Bradison. And I thought they're going to get Johnson, slid to the Chiefs. With the other fifth round, they snagged Charles Demmons, who I'm not mad about. He's a very athletic cornerback at a Stephen F. Austin. I feel like he's very underrated, a little bit under the radar, and that's why he fell this far. I think he's going to be very efficient, and he can fill that other wide out corner role that the Vikings are looking to fill with Isaiah Rodgers playing one side and Byron Murphy playing in the slot. But yeah, I think letting Emmett Johnson slide was definitely a mistake. But I'm happy with the 2 guys they got in the fifth. I'm just not happy on how early they drafted one of them. That's all I have to say there.
Yeah, I think that's the thing about this draft. This is definitely a draft that had less depth than other drafts. I saw that a lot. That's why I think a lot of teams traded up for players, and really when they did not need to because they were scared the teams are going to select them, and also why players fell because if there was, say, you're a DM like Danny Dennis Sutton is a great example. He is someone who probably could have gotten second or third round. I think he was initially projected to go early in the third, but my guess is teams that needed DN already selected one, and they're kind of like, we'll focus on our other positions. When you're a team like the Packers, where we have a lot of diversity within our picks, you don't stack up on certain positions. So I think that a lot of these players slid because teams are scared or they just didn't have the needs. But in the fifth round, the Green Bay Packers select Jaeger Bird, a center slash right guard slash left guard from Kentucky. That's a good pick. I think Jaeger played very well at Kentucky, and also having a guy who can play center is very useful because we only have one center right now, and that's Sean Ryan, who isn't a center per se. The problem with the Packers, and I said this before the season, I said center would be a difficult position, and I was right because we let go Josh Myers. I know Josh Myers wasn't very good, but he was not expensive to keep, and now we didn't have a center. So he's tell Elton Jenkins, who's been an all-pro left guard for 3 seasons, hey, we want you to play center. And one thing that people don't understand about the O line, I hear this all the time. Oh, just switch a position. I don't care if you're switching from right guard to left
It's
guard.
a big
It is so
difference.
difficult to switch a position. You could tell the way that Elton Jenkins held the ball, the way that he snapped the ball. The guy was very inexperienced as a center because I didn't believe he had played center since high school. He had to look under his legs like for the entire time before snapping it because he could not tell what he was doing with the ball. And then he broke his leg, and then Sean Ryan stepped in on very short notice and is our now permanent center, which I think is a good move because I really like Sean Ryan. But then that has a vacancy at right guard. So the thing with Jaeger Burton is having a guy like this is efficient, but I think Jennings Dunker, who's proven himself at right guard and right tackle at Iowa, would have been a better selection than Jaeger, who's more of a center. And it's nice too because Jaeger will be a guy that we can plug in at right guard or center in case of injuries. Right guard is my biggest concern right now because Anthony Belton is not it, and we're trying to move Jordan Morgan left tackle for whatever reason or right tackle. The right side of the O line's in trouble, and that's bad when you're someone like Josh Jacobs trying to run the classic Matt LaFleur inside zone to the right, or Jordan Love trying to scramble to his right. I trust Zach Tom. I do not trust Anthony Belton or Jordan Morgan. So I have a feeling that Gary Burton will probably be starting at right guard this year. And we'll see. Hopefully he does perform well. But once again, I think the Packers like to wait too much. And then again, I also said Emmett Johnson could be a potential pick because we
Yeah.
need a backup running back. We let Emmanuel Wilson go. I think that was a bad idea. I think that was an example of not a guy we couldn't afford, just a guy we didn't want to pay, which made no sense to me because he stepped up so huge when Jacobs was dealing with injuries. Now we don't have a really good backup running back. We have Chris Brooks and Marshawn No Hamstrings Lloyd. And I understand that Marshawn Lloyd is someone who has a lot of potential, but when the guy hasn't played in 2 years because he's been so injured, I don't trust that. I don't think he'll ever get healthy. I think he's had 2 hamstring tears in the same leg over the past 2 years.
That's bad.
So if Jacobs gets hurt, especially when you play like Josh Jacobs and you're playing against a guy like Brian Branch who will hit you in the knees, that's exactly how he got hurt. Um, it scares me. So I think picking someone like Emmett Johnson, we were there. We were one pick away, but we traded it in the overreach for Chris McKellen. So I am a little disappointed in that regard, but I think Jaeger Bird's a good pick, although he's going to probably be rushed to play right guard, which is not good, especially on the O line. You really want guys to develop, not rush them to play. That's always very difficult.
Yeah. This is the last prediction I was right on as far as a pick is Demond Claiborne. I believe I'm saying that right. Running back, Wake Forest. If Emmett didn't get selected, Mike Washington Jr. was my second choice, but he went really early. I think he was the third running back selected in this year's draft. And Demond probably would have been after that. 907 yards, 140 receiving yards, and 10 total touchdowns this year at Wake Forest. He ran a 4.37. So he's pretty fast, but he does sacrifice some of that size, which I feel like is definitely a factor when being a running back in the NFC North. He's like 5'9 3/4, and he's only about 190 pounds. So, I mean, smaller guys, they're faster, shiftier, but I feel like that isn't the Viking style out of a runner. But, we'll see. It's been a while since we've had a really consistent running back since Dalvin Cook. I understand Aaron Jones did a really good job holding down the fort in 2024, but he did have some injury concerns that year and especially a lot this year. He missed a lot of the season, went out like week 3, some with his ankle, and then was battling it the entire year and only had like 500 rushing yards. Um, Not a single 1,000-yard rusher this year or last year out of the Vikings. I was very disappointed. And I feel like we might be able to get back to it with them on Claiborne or another running back that we took undrafted.
Yeah. And speaking of running back concerns, I think Josh Jacobs is a great running back. But he plays rough and rowdy style. He definitely plays a bruiser style of running back. Definitely not on the levels of say like Larry Zonga, but he's probably someone more like a Curtis Martin. Has good speed, but he's someone who's going to lower his shoulder. He's going to try and get past you. And that bummed up his knee. I mean, what sucked was at the end of the year with Emmanuel Wilson hurt as well. The dude was essentially playing with no knee. Like his right knee was like done. And that concerns me because once again, like I said, this is why I said we probably shouldn't have picked someone like Emmett Johnson, is because if he tears his ACL, who do we have? Chris Brooks. Chris Brooks is slow. And Marshawn Lloyd cannot play. So our running game would be completely shot. But back on to picks in the 6th round, the Green Bay Packers adding another corner and Domani Jackson. I'm not exactly sure how to say it, from Alabama. I think this is a solid depth pick, especially for the 6th round. Not a lot of stats at Alabama. I think he was a rotational piece. 6'1", 196, so like good size.
That's a lengthy
Overall,
corner.
he's been ranked pretty well, but he didn't play a lot at Alabama, hence why he fell all the way to the 6th round. I think we need depth at corner, even though we only play 2 corners. I mean, technically Javon Bullard's a corner, but he's more of a rover / a nickel, depending on what position we're in. And again, I feel a lot better about our corner situation than I did before the year. And now I think that it won't be necessary, although it's a little sad for me that I do not believe that we'll re-sign Trevion Diggs. If we do, I would be fine with it, especially it'd give some more time for Domani Jackson and Brandon Cece to develop. But I think that we're probably going to be done with free agency for now.
He is a little older, and he does have some injury concerns. Trayvon does, but I don't know. It'd be cool for them to learn from a veteran corner, like when the Vikings took Stephon Gilmore and oh my gosh, was it Shaq Griffin? And they held down the fort pretty good on each side, but then Byron Murphy and some other younger guys. Um, oh my gosh, I think they traded a Caleb Evans, but Mackay, Blackman could learn from that's him.
Yeah. And then the final pick of the Green Bay Packers, they trade away their other 7th round pick to pick Trey Smack, a kicker from Florida. I don't know that much about Trey Smack, but I'm glad we have another kicker because Brandon McManus should go. Okay, Brandon McManus was way too crap last year. I don't know what the ratings on our channel are, so I'm going to say crap last year because there was just so many games, especially like the Chicago game where he missed 7 points that would have won us it because he missed 2 field goals and an extra point. When I see a kicker miss extra points, that means they need to go. It's okay if you miss one. There's always a freak accident or it gets blocked or something happens. But he was straight up like
That's a Crosby like
completely,
performance. I remember
yeah.
when the Packers played the Bengals. I believe that was like in 2021, and
Yes, I
they
remember
just
that in
kept on shanking
2022.
them and shanking them and shanking
And
them.
then he made the one to win it. That
Yeah,
was the thing about Mason Crosby that I remember is he would step up when you needed to win the game because he was not always the most consistent kicker. He had several games where he would miss 3, 4 field goals, but there would be games against the Bengals, for example, where he would go in there and he would make magic happen. I think Trey Smack's a good pick. I've heard actually he's picked at the end of the 6th round. I think that he is a once again, I think he's a really good pick. I heard a lot of great things from him coming out of Florida. That's the interesting thing about kickers is you don't need to pick them early. They
yeah,
will fall because teams usually have franchise
100%.
kickers. Like, you know, it's always nice when you can find someone like Brandon Aubrey, who's the best kicker in the NFL right
That's a
now.
gem.
Uh, we struggled after Crosby left to find a kicker. We had Anders Carlson, he was trash. Then we had Lucas or Narvison, Braden Narvison, who was
I
also
remember
trash.
that.
McManus was good last year, and we're like, okay, I think we found our guy at least temporarily. And then he hurt his hamstring or hurt his quad in one of the early games. I think that messed up his leg. And we had Haversick, but then we learned that Haversick can't kick outdoors. It's been a bit of a mess. I'm hoping maybe Trey Smack could be the future, and I think that'll be determined pretty quickly. I think you can usually, frankly, you can usually tell which kicker's better. I will say this: I think it's smart to hold on to both of them through the year, because what I don't want to happen is release Brandon McManus and try to plug in Smack, and then he starts missing field goals, and now it's like, oh crap, what are we gonna do? So overall, I would say the Packers made good picks. The mistake was trading away too much draft stock. I apparently we traded away both of our sevens to trade up for Trey Smack. That was also something I didn't like. And then of course the Chris McKellen overreach and not getting Jennings Dunker, that hurt. But overall, I think that the Packers had a good draft compared to last year where we had too many overreaches and too many trades. What do you think about the Vikings? What is your general consensus on
They
the
took
Vikings?
us. They took us center in the 7th round. Seems like he's decent. I haven't watched too much of his film, but he played in the Big 12 at Cincinnati, where Jake Galladay got drafted from. So he wasn't going up against nasty, big, nasty nose guards like the SEC. I think he'll be able to
Yeah,
hold his own. But I feel like the Vikings drafted a little counterproductively to what they talked about. Like I always see the post game pressers and KOC's talking about some. We need a score in the red zone, 5 yards in, goal line, and then they don't draft interior offensive line early. They don't draft running backs early. I do like the fullback pick. I think that does lead to some red zone scoring. And they were talking about wide receiver threes, and we didn't really fill that hole either. Didn't draft one. Um, but they did sign 2 UDFAs, but they're nothing special. Dylan Bell out of Georgia, Luke Wysong at Arizona, 2 semi-notable UDFAs, but they only had like 200 receiving yards apiece.
yeah,
But I do like their last UDFA. I feel like he might be a contributor this year. Is Keyjon Owens, running back at a FIU, and he had 1,300 rushing yards and I think like 13 touchdowns. So I look forward to seeing him contribute. He's 210 pounds, I believe, a little over 6 foot, so a bigger back. And I look forward to seeing the running back room competition this year with some fresh blood versus some aging guys like Aaron Jones. I love him to death, but he's probably only efficient on 3rd downs now. But yeah, as far as things go, I feel like the Vikings just overreached to get Caleb Banks. He was 44th on a lot of big boards that I saw. They took him 18th. I mean, you can take the 44th best guy at 18th, but he's probably still going to play like the 44th best guy. And I don't know. I just wish we would have focused a little more on some skill positions than trench work. But I mean, you never can be mad when you draft on either side of the line.
yeah. Quickly going over the Packers EUDFA so far, there's really only, I think it's 4. There's Kyron Drones from VTech. That's a quarterback because there was
Yep.
talk about that we would select a quarterback. I don't think that was necessary, especially now that we have Desmond Ritter and Kyle McCord. Because here's my thought: I think Love, his style, especially just the roughness of the game, he's probably going to get hurt, but only for a game or two. I trust someone like Desmond Ritter to get us through a game or two. He's not Malik Willis, but he could get us through a game or two. The entire season, no way. And then we have interior offensive line. I believe he's right or left guard. Josh Geske from Illinois. Nijalik, Nijalik, Nijalik. I know I'm saying that wrong. He's a running back from UCF, and then we signed another guard slash tackle from Iowa State. So I mean, we don't necessarily make a ton of money on. We also signed 2 wide receivers. The one I heard a lot about was J. Michael Sturdivante from Florida. I hear he's really good. So we need depth at receivers because right now we're not doing great. We only have 3 ever since we traded Wicks and let Dobbs go. And again, Christian Watson's going to get hurt. He gets hurt every year. He can never play the full 17.
Jet Sweep Merchant, though. Or not Christian
So
Watson, Jaden Reed's the Jet Sweep Merchant. Yeah.
Yeah. I tell you what, Matthew Golden's going to go crazy this year. He's being held back by poor playing calling and being down the depth chart. Let him run wild. And again, Matt LaFleur, because I was really mad at you at the end of the year. If you keep running bubble screens with Matthew Golden, I will find you. He runs a 4.29 40. Send him deep. That was his specialty at Texas. Don't keep sending him short with no blocking.
That's what I want to see out of the NFC North this year. I want to see some nice plays in the trenches, some nice runs, especially at the Vikings. I know the Packers have that ability, and it's kind of like a vice versa. Vikings aren't super good at running, super consistent. Packers are pretty consistent. Packers aren't super consistent at passing. Vikings are, and maybe things will switch up this year and it'll be more balanced. But I'm really looking forward to see how the North shakes down this year. Thanks for joining me, Quinn. It's been a really good
Appreciate you
episode.
having me on, man.
And I did not know how stacked the Packers are going to seem this year, especially on the interior. Hopefully the Vikings do not get mauled. And when schedule release comes around, we might get another episode, see how divisional things shake out with the North.
Sure.
And thank you for joining me. If anyone who's watching has any takes, please email me at joshtalksbikes@gmail.com. If there's anything you'd like me to talk about, maybe leave a comment, suggestion, like this, subscribe. Thank you so much. Quinn Hoover, Packers expert, one of my best friends in Nebraska. Oh my gosh, this guy, fellow ball knower, and he's really helped me respect the Packers more and more each year I know him. So thank you so much for joining me, Quinn.
All right, appreciate you having me on, man. We'll definitely get back together to talk about some schedule predictions. That's going to be the most exciting. That's the 100%. Next step in the NFL year is seeing that schedule.
Well, join me again in our next episode. Maybe I'll have another guest, but until then, see you next time.